LaxFactor podcast. And what is up? We are now live. This is kind of a herky-jerky thrown together LaxFactor live because it's Easter, so kind of got family stuff going on here. But today, really simple. What I want to talk about is the UNC and Duke game from Thursday night. What a game we had in Durham. It was number 1 Duke taking on number 2 UNC, a game that ended up going to overtime and seeing Joe Robertson stick the game winner as revenge for being disrespected with a short stick all game long. So the kind of the theme of this game was Robertson making them pay slowly over the course of the game, more specifically in the third quarter and in overtime. And I see UNC deciding to face guard Mike Sowers. I can kind of get that, although I'm not a big fan of face guarding anyone, because when you face guard someone, you're now taking your 6-man defensive scheme, and now it's just you're playing 5-on-5 for the most part. So you end up having to put in some sort of special slide package every time. Now, UNC's 8-9 games in. Every game they've played, they've played those games a specific way. They played a little bit of zone, I think, against UVA, but primarily they had a slide package that they stuck to game in and game out. And you shut Mike Sowers off, and then you put a short stick on Joe Robertson. That ends up taking you out of your flow. You're now playing 5-on-5. You got a shorty on an attackman that's very good, and I would never think that, Joe Robertson is the guy that we're going to put the short stick on. That didn't make any sense to me at all, and it must have played into their slide package. I'm not sure what that deal was, but what is sure is that Joe Robertson absolutely made them pay. And 4 goals. 3 assists for Robertson. That second assist, I felt like that was an example of where UNC, they decided to send help from the crease instead of from coma. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of pop over into this screen, and I am going to share my screen, and I'm going to demonstrate in one way how North Carolina traditionally was playing, guys at X and guys that were dodging up on wings and things like that, and how that changed in this Duke game. So let's see if I can get this right. Nope, that's not the right one. That is the right one. Boom. All right, so what we have here is a guy at X right now, and I'm not going to draw on this or anything like that. I'm just going to kind of show you the play. So what you will see as they're dodging is we have a 2-man game going on here. It's glitching out a little bit, but we have a guy here and a guy here. They're playing this guy up, so that's technically what you would kind of call the coma help. It's the help from behind or the help from the opposite side, and he's the help. And then you bring your guys down from the backside to cover that backside. So you see they do that here. Now we're going to see them do that again against Denver early in the year. Same thing. They bring it up. Oh, wait, no. I think this one's going to have to go a little bit deeper. I don't know. That's a terrible example here. You can tell that I'm kind of herky-jerky in this up here. So we're going to get the heck out of that, and we'll get back to this title. Main camera. Okay. So moral of the story, though. On that one with Lowry, they end up bringing the help from the crease. Bowen ended up being the one that slid down from the crease. That opens the backside up. If they had kind of stuck to what they had done traditionally, they would have brought the help from X where Sowers was, and it would have resulted in Sowers having his man hung up. So that seemed to be what North Carolina was trying not to do, and I'm wondering what kind of analytics they had. Did they maybe have some analytics that proved that in terms of percentages, it was better to not let Sowers be at X with no defender on him and his hands free? But I felt like I like to keep things goal line extended and behind, so I would have rather sent the slide from X, have Sowers out back hung up, and then, he's hitting cutters, but you're opening up the backside completely when you already have Sowers' guy out of the mix, and it's just a 5-on-5. Much harder for the defense to cover because there's less bodies taking up space on the field. So I didn't like that. That first assist there that Robertson had, I felt like that was a product of shutting Sowers off and a mix of that and playing the shorty on Robertson. That was a bad look. And then same thing on his game-winning goal. In his game-winning goal, he's at X playing a 2-man game with Sowers, and that one we will watch here. So let me move you back to the highlight screen here. Nope, dang it, I keep doing that. It's this scene here. And then let's watch this game-winning goal play out. You're going to see 2-man game. They switch up. Sowers like, okay, hey, they're not coming. I'm just going to give it to Robertson. Now, this is where it's key. Normally, the way they played and the way you saw in that Denver clip that I played, Sowers' guy would have normally been up in this area so that if somebody got beat underneath, they have a chance to get someone across. In this case here, Sowers kind of pulls his guy off a little bit, and he knows he's not going anywhere. So it's like, why not get him the heck completely out of the way? And they did that, and then Robertson scores underneath. Let's watch this clip from behind. You're going to see no help. Nobody decides to go. Robertson sees it. He is just going to duck underneath and come. No one comes from the crease. Probably the help should have came from this area here. This guy was backing up this guy up here, so they probably could have sent him and gotten some semblance of help. But traditionally, North Carolina would have sent that help from across the crease. And because Sowers was being shut off, they don't have that slide available. And that ends up stinging them in the end. It's a rough look here. Another story of the game, Chris Gray. He was quiet, he didn't do a whole lot, and I didn't see that Duke was doing a whole lot outside of just playing really good off ball against him, making sure when he did dodge it, they kept somebody on his hands at all times. So Duke did a good job of just being on Gray's hands, making sure his shots are contested. He ends up taking, I think it was 11 shots on the day, all of them contested, like I said, with guys on his hands. Now, in fairness, I think that Adler robbed him on a couple of occasions, so I think that easily, if the goalie wasn't standing on his head, especially in the first half, he would have had 2 first-half goals that Adler ended up gobbling up on him, so that definitely hurt his production. He would have been 4-1 otherwise, and maybe the game changes, and we'll talk about Adler here in a little bit, but I feel like he was limited to that 3 points, and Duke didn't do a whole lot outside of just playing really good defense on him. I say that's not a whole lot. That is a whole lot in the end when it comes down to it, but they didn't do they didn't have to resort to what UNC did, which was totally take ourselves out of our defensive scheme, shut this guy off. They limited his touches a little bit by shutting him off intelligently, but that's why I'm not a big fan of shutting people off. You can play really good defense, help defense, stay on guys' hands, and limit them without having to shut them off. And then what's the sense in shutting somebody off if you're just going to open it up for a guy to score 4? Sowers could have been 3-3, and I think that UNC could have more effectively limited other people. And what ended up happening here was Sowers had 1 goal, but as a result of holding him to that 1 goal, they totally open it up for Robertson, especially with that short stick. He goes 4-3, and then the rest of the guys factors as needed. Justin Anderson, he's continued to be one of my favorite mids in the country. He goes for 2 goals and an assist, but he is a sneaky dude. Guy can shoot, guy can dodge, he can do it all. Big Justin Anderson fan here. And then, you kind of start looking at, was that UNC strategy versus Sowers wise? And like I said, I'm not a fan of shutting guys off. You end up playing 5-on-5. Sowers did a great job of trying to keep his guy in the backside. You'll see he used himself and he gave himself up to set picks for a lot of his teammates. And the reason I think that was effective was because they weren't even hedging the pick. They were trying so hard to deny Sowers the ball that typically when you see a pick, you'll end up seeing the guy who's setting the pick, his defender will kind of pop out a little bit, make sure that the pick isn't so effective that guy gets off it cleanly. So you kind of hedge the pick. You kind of cheat a little bit as the defender of the guy setting the pick so that you can help the guy get through the pick and continue on and cover his guy. So he did a lot of that. But then you also see a lot of times when guys are dodging, he would end up kind of starting on the crease and then fade off on that backside crease. And what that does was opens up crease feeding, because if your guy's not helping that much and he's not coming off of you more than a foot, more than a stick length is what they seem to try to be doing, that ended up working into Duke's favor as well. I feel like North Carolina would have probably, in hindsight, you can say these kind of things, and I'm not even sure I'm right. So don't take it like I'm trying to say, terrible defensive strategy cost UNC the game. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I still feel like UNC may have been better served letting Sowers carve them up, trying to cover him, trying to just play good help defense. I liked what Syracuse did against Duke, where they came out and they pressed everybody. What happens when you come out and you press people all over the field is if you do get beat and you do have to send the help or send the fire or send the slide, whatever you want to call it, you end up getting beat early enough that the slide can come early, and then everybody else can kind of cover and get into position. And if the defense or offense is going to beat you with a feed, it's a much further pass that they have to throw. You end up having to throw that pass a farther distance. Defenders can get their sticks on it more effectively. So that's why I like pressing where you're capable. And North Carolina's athletic enough that they could have done that. And it would have limited a little bit how bad, Sowers 3-3 against Syracuse. I feel like that was a pretty solid defensive effort by Syracuse to hold him to that. And it ends up being a 1-goal game, granted in favor of Duke. North Carolina, I felt like had they pressed, they probably could have limited somebody like Robertson down to maybe 3 points. Maybe Sowers carves them up for 6. still, but I feel like then they wouldn't have had to come out of their defensive scheme just for this one game, for this one player. You end up being better as a defense even in a loss. In this case, they didn't get a whole lot of work. This didn't improve them defensively all that much because this isn't something they're going to have to do often. They probably wouldn't do this again unless they played Duke again. So I don't think they improved all that much. And what you did was you kind of helped Duke figure out if we have to do this again. They played much better in the second half against shutting Sowers off. I feel like that all of it favors Duke. It favors Duke in their next meeting. I feel like it shows a little bit of lack of confidence in your defenders. So yeah, he goes 3-3 against Syracuse, but they showed their defense that, hey, we trust you guys to do what you got to do, and you can still shut off here and there. At times, Syracuse pressed out enough that they did deny Sowers the ball and denied him in that moment that opportunity to go. So with the UNC scheme, I didn't like it, and it seemed that Sowers was smart enough, and he kind of saw that even where he could get the ball out at the end line, he could see what was happening. The doubles were going to come. He was going to face heavy pressure. So often he was just content to be the dummy dodge and play that two-man game, let the other guy go, knowing that he was pulling his man away from being helped in those two-man game situations, and it stung him. I was actually hoping that when I watched this tape that it showed a little bit more that Sowers pulling himself away from the defense affected North Carolina in a negative way. I don't think we saw a whole lot of situations where Sowers' man would have been the help, except that game-winning goal at the end that we already saw. But I do think that just playing that 5-on-5 defense made it much more difficult for North Carolina to cover. And you could see some of the desperation dodges where we're talking about guys dodging through doubles. I forget who it was. Maybe it was Lowry. That scored a goal at one point where he got doubled and came down the left. But because there's only 5 guys, there's a little bit more open space in the field, and Duke took advantage of that. Another key takeaway here is Adler. He was a huge factor in this game. UNC put more shots on cage than Duke did, 28-26, even though Duke overall outshot UNC, which I was surprised at. And Adler made 3 more saves than Krieg, and that's the ball game. You got a freshman goalie who played incredible against a very good Duke team, but he robbed Gray. Adler did a couple of times early in the game, and his save in overtime was huge, despite the fact his save in overtime was kind of caused by him turning the ball over before they ended up getting that shot off. But he makes a crazy desperation save, gives Duke the ball back. Duke goes up, and I think they scored the game winner off of that possession after. So if Adler didn't stand on his head over the course of that first half, making those 12 saves, 7 of them in the first quarter. He had 12 first half saves, 7 in the first quarter, 5 in the second. He doesn't stand on his head and make all those saves. This isn't, this is North Carolina's game. He played big, and he also proved he belongs in the ACC number 1. He's right up there at the top in terms of best goalies in the country. Krieg is too. I mean, Krieg is a freshman. He played incredible, but you see some freshman goalies be dumb enough to do really well, and you even look at Johnson at North Carolina as a freshman, tore it up, ends up losing his job to Krieg, and now he's in the transfer portal. I don't get that. But Adler proves he belongs, and he's one of the best keepers in the country. Team stats, there was nothing real big to take away here. Duke lost the turnover battle 16-13, so I think that advantaged Carolina in that way. But Duke won the faceoff battle, 15-25 draws. Duke won, so Naso did a great job again. His work over the course of the third quarter, where they won 7 of the 10 draws over the course of the third quarter, what I think was key in giving Duke some momentum, giving Duke a little bit of control as they got back into the game, tied it up, and then things went back and forth for a bit. I think that takeaways, what does this mean for the ACC? I mean, it means that Duke is firmly in the driver's seat in the ACC. Not firmly in the driver's seat, but right now Duke has proven, hey, we beat the number 2 team in the country and we beat the number 4 team in the country back to back. That is tough to do on Thursday nights back to back like they did. So, I mean, obviously, now Duke is the best team in the country. No one can argue that. Duke is the best team in the ACC. No one can argue that. Does that mean Duke is going to win the ACC and the title? Absolutely not. I mean, we've got 2 teams now in the ACC that have played Duke to a 1-goal game, and we haven't even seen Notre Dame and how they're going to hold up against the upper echelon of the ACC. We'll get to see that today when Syracuse takes on Notre Dame at noon. I will be watching that at an Easter barbecue at my mother's house, so that's going to be pretty sweet. Also important for me, at least, I think this gives Sowers the edge over Gray. Now, you could make the argument, well, Gray had the better game. 2 goals, 1 assist to Sowers, 1 goal. Gray didn't get face guarded the entire game. The entire game, Sowers had a guy that was literally within hand's reach of him, and he was face guarding him, not paying attention to almost anything else that went on in the game. Now, they did go a little bit harder, and I think he was playing a little bit more help, and I think towards the second half, you started seeing him creep away from Sowers as much as a stick length. But for the most part, Sowers got face guarded, and the fact that he was being face guarded opened things up for his offense and helped his team, I think, more than Gray's 2 goals and 1 assist helped his team. You could even make the argument Gray taking 11 shots and only scoring 2 goals. That actually may have hurt his team. He may have been forcing a little bit. Maybe he lets the offense run through. And once again, it sounds like I'm dumping on Gray. I'm not. Everybody wants to talk about it, and everyone wants to know who my favorite is and who other people's favorites are. I get chirped all the time about it. And so I'm just telling you, right now, if I had to vote today, I would give my vote to Sowers. Number one, his team won in the head-to-head battle. He factored by not being a factor and by playing within himself, not forcing things. He could have forced it more when he got a bunch of dodges, and he ended up taking a lot of dodges off the end line as the ball went out of bounds. So he got looks. But what was important was that in the face of the double teams that were inevitably coming, he was smart, gave the ball up, let his teammates do damage. And as Joe Robertson said, I don't know the exact quote, but he said after the game, even in a game where Sowers wasn't able to factor, he was still the biggest factor on the field because of what he forced UNC to cover him, and that took them out of their game. They lose the game. So right now, I'm back on. I've been, like I said, if I had a vote, I was never going to vote for Gray. A couple weeks ago, when I had talked about, hey, I think Gray is the favorite at that point. It wasn't me saying that he was my favorite for it. I still think Sowers is the best player in the country by far, and I think that it should go to the best player in the country in the end. But what I was more saying was that I think that at that point the committee was favoring Gray. I think the committee still may be favoring Gray, but in my opinion, that's a mistake. I think you got to give it to the guy that factors in the game more heavily. And in this game, the fact that they had to shut Sowers off all game long, put a dude in his face and just say, hey, we're going to play 5-on-5 all day. I think that speaks to what Sowers is on the field in a matchup like this. So that's big pimping. That is big pimping, as we'll say. Let's hit the questions here, because this is going to be a short one today because it's Easter. I almost didn't do it. I almost said, maybe let's tap out on this one and let's skip it. It's Sunday. There's not going to be it's Easter weekend. Not going to be a lot of people watching, but here we go. We got Wendell. Hi, Dad. You mentioned the UB. So my daughter is always hopping in here on my daughter's phone saying hi. So Wendell says, you mentioned the UBC full court press yet? No, I have not. UNC full court press. I'm not a big fan of 10-man rides either. I think that Duke failed more clears. I didn't put the stat down, but I did see that Duke, I think, failed on 4 or 5 clears over the course of the game, and UNC's done that pretty consistently to teams all year where they just come out, press them, and it was definitely trouble for Duke early, and they definitely failed on, I think, a couple more clears in the first half than they did in the second. So that plays, but I'm still overall, the later into the season we get, teams are going to be able to pick it up a little bit more. I will say that UNC's 10-man ride is insanely effective. Denver is, I think, busts 10-man rides quite often as well. And I mean, UNC's probably got one of the more effective 10-man rides that I've seen in a while. They haven't been getting stung. I think it was against High Point. They got stung early in that game with the 10-man ride. I think against Denver they may have too. So it does seem like they're getting stung less by it. So maybe they're getting more effective in that ride. But so that is it. I'm going to end this one. I just wanted to talk about that game quick. I just wanted to show here quick and not bail on the live stream because it was Easter weekend. 100%. I will be here with the recap show tomorrow. The big game here that we have is the Cuse Notre Dame. Let's dive into it while I have you here. Might as well look at the calendar a little bit. Talk about some of the games that we have rocking. So we're going to have Vermont at UMBC. I think that's going to be a pretty big game for the America East. I like Vermont in this one, so watch it because I just think that Vermont could potentially win in a shootout. I think that Vermont's going to be hard for some of the America East teams to hold back. Another big one, and this is a huge NEC matchup, is Hobart at Bryant. That one's going to be well worth the watch. Let's peep the preview for this one here. Preview-wise, we got Bryant at 5-1, Hobart at 2-1. It's Logan McGovern and his 50-50 style of ball, 9 goals, 8 helpers. Bennett I always forget Abladian. I always forget how to pronounce that, but I have had to say it at times. 11 goals, 7 assists for Bryant versus Ryan Archer, 6-7 for Hobart. Jason Knox, 6-1. Hobart can fill it up. Bryant can play a complete game across the board, so that's going to be a big one in the NEC. Where are they standing in terms of their conference? I'm not sure. We're not going to look. UMass Drexel. I'm not going to count Drexel out in this one, although UMass is now playing pretty tough, and I'm thinking UMass may start getting to the point that people expected them to be at, despite their insanely late start. High Point's going to beat up on Bellarmine. I think Villanova's going to beat Providence. The big one of the day today here, we have Notre Dame at Syracuse at noon, so that's going to be the big game for the day. I like the Orange, but the Orange are going to have to do a better job at the faceoff dot. If Syracuse continues to get beat by ACC teams at the faceoff dot like they did against Duke, that is going to spell trouble. And they've already gotten victimized at the faceoff dot now by Vermont, then by Naso of Duke. So Notre Dame has arguably the best faceoff team and duo in the country. You can make the argument Denver has that now with Stathakis and Erlin, but Leonard and Gallagher were the best faceoff duo in the country before TD came back and went 14-14 on the day. So that's big for them. So if Syracuse can handle the dot a little bit better, maybe win 40% of those draws, I think Syracuse wins this game. If Leonard and Gallagher just run roughshod all over the field on Syracuse between the boxes and win that possession battle savagely for Notre Dame, it might spell trouble for Syracuse because Notre Dame is capable offensively. I just wonder. You see what Syracuse did against Duke and how well they played Duke defensively. I wonder if that's going to translate to being able to hold Notre Dame back to maybe 12 goals or so, despite a possession disparity, and then that'll keep Syracuse in it. So I like Syracuse overall, though. I think that they'll probably win this game, but I would expect a one-goal game. I don't think we're going to see many games of margin played in the ACC here this year. Stony Brook's going to beat Hartford. That's going to happen. Jacksonville at Robert Morris. That's a big game, so that should be a hotly contested matchup. I bet you that one is physical, and I bet you we might even see a couple of scuffles on the field during that. Towson at Hofstra, another big game here. I'm just trying to see. And then we got Penn State at Maryland, and I think that Maryland's going to go undefeated in the big, and that's just going to be how it goes. So Penn State at Maryland. Georgetown at St. John's. Does Georgetown beat St. John's up again, or do we start to see that trend where the teams that Georgetown beat up early in the season are now going to play them a little tougher? Georgetown's been battling injuries. Some key players have been out. Another huge one that I know a lot of people are going to be watching today is Army at Lehigh. Lehigh is a legit ball club here. Let's check the preview on this bad boy. Let's see. We got Lehigh at 4-0, Army at 4-1, with their only loss coming to Virginia. Brendan Nichtern, 14-17, one of the best attackmen in the country. I think I've been talking a lot about the top three Tewaaraton finalists. The guys that I think will end up being Tewaaraton finalists as being Sowers, Gray, and Bernhardt, kind of in that order. I think that of those three, if one of those three players wins the title, they win the Tewaaraton. And I think of those three, the last man standing wins the title if they don't. So let's say Duke makes it to the semis, loses, but Maryland and North Carolina don't. Boom. I think Sowers wins it. But fourth and fifth guy, you got to kind of throw Ryan Tierney out there because he's been trashing on people. If he continues that, I think he ends up getting a nod as being kind of the, hey, you put up a boatload of points, you get a nod as one of the finalists. And I think Brendan Nichtern right now is playing good enough to easily own one of those spots, assuming Army makes the tournament and plays well. So that's going to be a big one there. Tommy Schelling has been tearing it up for Lehigh. He's 10-13 on the season. So it's Schelling and Nichtern, or Schelling versus Nichtern overall. And then I believe that Lehigh wins a boatload of faceoffs. Mike Sisselberger, he's an absolute monster at the faceoff dot. Right now, he's winning them at a 75% clip for Lehigh. So watch that in that matchup because that's going to be Lehigh's chance to win this game. They win the possession battle, play solid defense against Army. Army's not deep offensively. So if they can limit, Army's from an offensive standpoint and make sure that they don't give Nichtern 8 points in this game and they win that possession battle, I kind of say I almost like Lehigh in that one. But I do still think Army's going to win. Don't get me wrong. I like Lehigh to win the game if they do all of their things right. I think Army's going to end up winning a close game, though, in reality. Another big one is Loyola at Navy. Loyola lost to Towson. Loyola is struggling badly offensively, but they're playing really good team defense. So what can Loyola do against Navy? Let's look at the preview for that one, too, because I'm a sucker for the previews. Open link in new tab. And I should be showing you these previews. I could probably do that, but then I'd have to turn to my computer over here. I know you guys would rather look at my mug as you hear me talking. I am going to put this out as an audio podcast for anyone who's already tuned out or you missed the beginning. We'll put this out, the audio version as well. Yeah, Navy 3-0, Loyola 4-3. Loyola's got some tough losses here. Loyola has struggled offensively, but Navy, very capable in the end. I like Navy in this one, probably the way that Loyola's been playing. But if Loyola plays angry, who knows? Game on. UMass Lowell at Albany. Albany's going to beat up on UMass Lowell. That's going to happen. Richmond at Virginia. That's another big one. Ohio State at Rutgers, another big one. So Michigan at Johns Hopkins on Sunday. Man, what a throwaway. What a throwaway for a live stream this was. Cuse Notre Dame prediction from Christopher Alley. I'm going with Cuse by a goal. I think it's going to be a crazy game. So that's it. This was a throwaway. This was probably by far the worst live stream that I have ever done. Hopefully I never do one this badly again, but one again. Hey, it's Easter weekend, man. I can hear my kids running around right now. My wife is out at the hair salon. My kids are upstairs by themselves. I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old running around upstairs by themselves. With pretty much no parental supervision. They might as well be home alone. So I'm thinking I probably should cut my losses here, end this now, and make sure that the kids aren't killing each other and trying to burn my house down. So all of you guys, come back tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll have the big recap show. Going to do a good job with that. We're going to talk about all the important games, what happened, have some highlights thrown in and all that good stuff. So about tomorrow, between 10 and 11 or so, I'll get that pumped out despite the fact that it's Easter. So that's it. Thank you for watching, and Hoost is out.